Good morning again, everybody. This is Ms. Hoffman. Today I'm going to talk about Chapter 8 in your speech books. Again, if you don't have it already, please, you need to get it as soon as possible and let me know when you do get it because it is part of a grade. Today I have my phone sitting up at an angle, so it may look kind of weird. I apologize in advance. And it's Western Day. I'm filming this the day before we would actually learn this in class. So we're skipping all the way to Chapter 8 because, for me, it makes more sense for you to know what to do with your body before you even start beginning to write the speech. So if you look at the first paragraph here, he talks about, it's called Delivery and Effective Speech. He talks about how delivery can be defined as the actual presentation of the message to an audience via the communication channels, including all of the speaker's vocal, physical, and supporting elements. So that's very important because it doesn't matter what kind of good information you have in your speech. If you don't present it well, people aren't going to think that it is a well done speech. You have to know what it is you're saying and you have to know how to say it. If you don't have an effective delivery, the audience is not going to respond very well to you. Performance is a bit of an act. You will have to learn a little bit of acting in this class. I use it as a way for you to pretend, especially if you're nervous. It's a good thing to think about. If like, okay, just because I'm nervous doesn't mean I have to show it. I can, act like I'm not nervous. So he talks about reviewing chapter 1 for 10 common errors to avoid before you go to this chapter. Thankfully, we just went over that chapter. And if you don't remember the 10 common errors, they are on page 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically the last half of chapter 1. So he talks about the beginning in the second paragraph, and it's really important to think about how you're going to begin your speech and think about before the speech even begins. When you walk up to the front of the room, the people are seeing you. It's not like those weird television specials where they're like, oh, hi, didn't see you there. You can't ignore the audience as you're coming up to the front of the room to speak. They see you, so it's totally fine to acknowledge them and nod at them and say good morning, everyone, because they know that you're there. So he says, walk to the front of the room with confidence. Know what the audience sees and try to center yourself within the audience's field of view. So it's really easy in my room. So I can show you. I mean, you've seen my room before, but you'll be able to see that if I can get it the right way, my podium is right here, and it is in the center of the room, so that's not something that you have to worry about very often. I'm going to try to find a new way to hold my phone up while I speak to you because the slanting isn't working for me. So he says, look around at the audience to make sure that you have everyone's attention. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, sit there and wait for everyone to look up at you and be like, yeah, everybody paying attention? It's not necessarily that. It's that especially with the way that we're doing our speech class and we write our critiques and things like that, some people may still be writing. I might be writing too, so you need to, just look up and make sure that I'm ready for you to speak. I'll let you know when I am. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. I think this box will hold up my phone just fine. I hate cutting and making a new video. It's very annoying, so if I can avoid it. Okay, that's a lot better. So he says, look around and then take a breath and begin your presentation. Remember how we talked about how breathing was so important because you want to center yourself. You want to make sure that you have enough breath to talk and that you feel relaxed. Let's see. I say in my outline, the audience can smell fear, and it's totally true. If you come up here and you're like, good morning, they're going to be like, I don't know if I want to watch this person, because when we try to watch someone that's uncomfortable, makes us uncomfortable. I kind of talked about that in chapter 1. I said check for feedback cues. Remember what the basic model of communication feedback is what the audience says to you without actually saying anything. Next one is vocal style. We hate robots in this class. What I mean by that is when you stand up in front of the class and you talk in the same exact speech pattern for 100 million hours. That gets very grating and very boring, and the audience is going to lose attention very quickly. The other problem that a lot of people have that I notice is they use the exact same speech patterns, and every sentence will start to sound the same, and they will talk and end and start their sentences the exact same way, or they do the same, speech effect at the end. And that can get very repetitive too, because it goes da 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 da. And it just becomes this bad pattern. We don't speak like that naturally. If you listen to the way that I'm talking right now, I'm going up and down and up and down and back and forth, because I am emphasizing different words depending on what it is that I want to get across to you. So use natural human emotion. Don't be afraid to use your face, use your body. I mean, we're gonna, be wearing masks in the classroom, but you guys have the opportunity to be expressive on your videos. So make sure that you are using that expression to your advantage. The tone is your emotion in your voice. If you say, oh, I'm so excited, then your tone is truly excited. But if you say, oh boy, I'm so excited, then your tone is going to be sarcastic. The volume is how loud you are, and pacing is the speed at which you talk. We have to be careful about pacing as well, because if you are a Speedy Gonzales up here, just blah, 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 it's going to be very difficult for everyone to understand. He says, you got to speak with conversationality. He also talks about how the audience is turned off by people that sound fake and over-rehearsed. You don't want to stand up here and do your entire speech like an infomercial. That's also going to come off as actually kind of condescending, because it sounds like you've prepared so much that you have to talk down to the audience. We don't need to do that. We need to have that conversation with them, even if they are not physically responding or vocally responding. It's a two-way street. He talks about articulation, which is word clarity, and enunciation, which is word crispness. So whenever you are making words happen, it all happens within your mouth, your lips, your teeth, and your tongue. So you have to make those guys work together in order to make your words understandable. If you don't move your lips up and down, then you're not going to be understood. And if you don't move your tongue, then it's just going to sound like you got some mouth in your mouth. We don't want that. We want moving the jaw, opening the mouth, moving the tongue, and then making sure you articulate with your teeth. Now again, I'm not saying that you have to talk like this every time you do your speech. That's silly. You're not going to be that far away from the camera. But I don't know if you've ever heard the exercise, lips, teeth, tip of the tongue. It's to help your articulation, help warm up your tongue. If you're someone that has a lot of problems with this, your tongue isn't very functional when it comes to consonants and things like that, you can do a vocal exercise. Well, it's not really vocal, it's an articulation exercise, I guess, where you paint the inside of your mouth with your tongue. So you just take your tongue and you just go all around your mouth like that for like 2 minutes. It starts to burn really bad because your tongue is a muscle, just like anything else, and if you don't use it, then it's going to become, lazy, and you got to get it back into shape. He talks about speaking to your audience, not just toward them. I like to say at them. If you're talking at someone, you don't necessarily care what they think or what they're going to say. You're just talking for the sake of talking. You need to respond to what they respond to and vice versa. Let's see. And he uses the word interactive for an oral presentation. I think that's very important. Let's see. Reading also sounds insincere and robotic because you tend to get into this the same vocal patterns. Vary your speaking patterns. Speeches can be made infinitely more interesting by varying inflection, tone, volume, pacing, and so on. No one wants that either because we don't want to be read to. We would like to be spoken to like adults because that's what we all are in here. Eye contact is the next one. So very important. We kind of mentioned that in chapter 1. Eyes are the window to the soul. You don't want to focus anywhere else really besides the middle ground of the audience. If you're too high, you're going to actually put a little bit of strain on your throat. Your vocal cords and your neck muscles are going to be pulled up. If you're down, your voice is just going straight down to the floor, and we don't want that. And if you're even like slightly too high, this starts to look very strange because there's no one up at this level. So keep it above the heads, the forehead, that sort of thing. He says don't do walls, floor, or ceiling, especially if you were to move this way. All we're going to see is the side of your face, and nobody wants to look at the side of your face. They want to look at your eyeballs. Like I said, if you're nervous about looking into the eyes of the audience, you can use the top of the head, the forehead. Make sure you're presenting to the whole audience, not just one person, because that gets so awkward. I think I told my story in chapter 1 about the kid that yelled at me while doing a monologue, but no one wants this the entire time that you're doing your speech to one person individually, and it gets very uncomfortable. So look around. My rule, 50% in the middle, 25% to the side, 25% to the other side. Now, if you're making a video, it's not as much important to go back and forth because you only have the one audience member, which is your recording device. But if you come into the classroom, you have to present to a wide spread of people. So 50% here, 25% to the side, 25% to the side. You want to avoid the windshield wipers. That looks just as silly. So you're going to go here, talk, talk, talk. You're going to gesture over here for a second. Maybe you want to come back to the middle. Maybe you want to go to the side. I tend to go middle to my right, and then to my left, and then back to the middle. Volume is the next thing. Projection, we talked about the way that you breathe in the first chapter, so making sure that your voice goes all the way across the room. If I can't hear you, I can't grade you. So going back to the proper breath support, and he talks about adjusting the room to the room size. If the room was much smaller than this, I wouldn't need to talk as loud. If it was much bigger than this, I would need to talk louder. So especially if you're coming here in the next couple of weeks and you need to practice and see how loud you need to be, then definitely let me know. You can come in here and just sort of test the acoustics. It also tends to be a little echoey in here, which is not a bad thing because it helps people hear you, but you also don't want to yell because then it's actually going to make an echo. Noise is also, again, in this thing. You want to adjust to any kind of noise that comes on. So I'm not sure if I covered it in the basic model of communication. I'm pretty sure that I did. But noise is something that gets in the way of what you're saying. So it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be visual. So you can be seeing something that's distracting you, hearing something that's physically impairing you from hearing me. Or mental, you can be thinking about something that you're just totally occupied with and you're not understanding what I'm saying. Err on the side of a slightly higher volume. That's going to help you to be able to get to the back of the room. I say be careful of echo, just think about it. And then if you have any impediments to your speaking, now this is something that a lot of people are sensitive about, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone at all, but I want you to know if you have any kind of speech impediment, if you have a strong accent, especially now in masks and shields and things like that, you just have to work a little bit harder on it because it is it's just a way of life, to be understood if you're someone that has that impairment or has something that you need to overcome like that. It's just a matter of practice. And then I say be careful for the echo, especially if you're in a room filming your video that echoes. Audio echo is a bad thing sometimes, and so if you're talking and it's just wah, 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 wah coming back at you, then I can't hear you and I can't grade you. So watch your video before you submit it to make sure that it sounds good. The next one is rate. So like we talked about, no Speedy Gonzales. No too slow either. You don't want to be the turtle and you don't necessarily want to be the hare. You want to be a nice middle ground where people can understand you. If you rush, it gives off the vibe that you don't care, that you just want to be able to get it over with, and blah, 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 and you don't really care, and you're just trying to finish. If you can be hard to understand, and we have a tendency to think a lot faster than we speak, so be careful of that. If you're a fast thinker like me, sometimes you'll see me go blah, 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 because my brain is trying to say 6 words at one time, and my mouth can't do that. So it either combines words or just makes bleh, and then, I have to start over. So if you think ahead just a little tiny bit and have your proper notes that'll help you out, then you'll be okay. Breathing can help that, like I mentioned, if you kind of forget what you're supposed to say and you want to say an really bad, just take a pause, finish your sentence. Adrenaline also affects your rate. So I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, Ms. Hoffman, I worked so hard and my speech was 5.5 minutes long and it only needed to be 4 minutes, and then I stood up there and it was 3 minutes long. They say adrenaline's a heck of a drug. And it's true, because that adrenaline is going to make you talk way faster than you intended to talk, and then all of a sudden you're going to be about a minute short of your speech, and you're not really going to know why, and you're going to forget all your things. It's just going to keep going and going. So breathe. Just take a second and kind of figure out what it is you need to do. There is no shame in standing up here and just pausing for a second, finding where you're at, and continuing. You should feel like you're talking a little bit slow. Again, I don't, in a bad way. I talk kind of fast to you guys because I'm trying to get all the information out and make sure that I'm not running short. I did, in chapters 1 and 2, I gave you a little bit of a more condensed version. In class, I was just kind of rambling on, and I almost didn't have time to finish, so got to be careful about that. Using your phone and your computer to record the audio can help you be aware of what it is that you need to work on. And so just practice and listen to yourself speak. And if you keep finding yourself saying like, and, then you know you need to adjust to that. Gestures. He says in here, be careful of too many gestures. Meaning, I call this the girls that want to fly away, oh my gosh, you don't want to do that. Too many gestures can be overwhelming. If you're using your hands all the time and you're just moving around and they're kind of near your face and you're just exclaiming and pounding on the podium, it's going to be so much for your audience. It's also going to be distracting, and if you're doing those repetitive parallel motions, it's going to get old real fast. If I talked about parallel gestures in chapter 1 and 2, then great, you know it. If you don't, if I didn't, I'm going to tell you about it again now just to make sure. Parallel gestures are the same on each side of your body. They're not in this book, and so I want to make sure that I mention it. It's just when both of your hands are doing the same thing, and it tends to get very annoying. So make sure that you're avoiding those. B is too little. If you have too little gestures and all you do is stand here the entire time, you're going to start to look like one of those robots that we hate so much. So you want to make sure that you do a little bit of gesturing, but you don't want it to be overwhelming. The audience also can't see it, especially if you're behind the podium and you do just a little bit of gestures with your hands. No one's going to be able to see that. Too big gestures, even if you're not doing a lot of them, but they're humongous, they're going to cover possibly your face and be distracting, and you might seem like you're a little bit crazy. Now, too weak gestures are also terrible, and I know this is like too hot, too cold, but if you're going crazy, you're going to seem insane. But if you also make very tiny gestures with your hands and you don't really commit to anything, but the audience can tell that you want to do something, then it's going to look like you're not confident, and the audience is going to see that fear and that nervousness. So if you're going to make a gesture, commit to it. Even if it's not right, it's better than having these little bitty weird wiggly hands in front of you and being like, yeah, go everybody, and showing that nervousness. Neutral position, we talked about having your arms at your side. If it's something that you have trouble with, you can use the little trick to grab the hem of your pants with 2 fingers and then train yourself to talk like this and then let go for your presentation. It's that muscle memory that we talked about in the beginning, that you've got to train your body to do these things. Choose times to gesture. If you have something that you really want to drive home to the audience, now it's your turn to learn about speech. So, certain words, certain things. Your focus should stay mainly on your face and the speech itself, so you don't want your gestures to be the focus of that. Gestures are just something that we do naturally to kind of assist with the speech. He says be selective, spontaneous, and also relaxed. So those are 3 things that don't normally go together, but it doesn't mean you have to plan every single movement, so you're not just standing there and then going, and then you need to learn the speech, and then you're talking, and the whole world talking, because that's going to be really creepy in itself. Videotape yourself so you can see yourself move. Right now I kind of have the camera on me so that I can see what I'm doing. So if you're someone that's not quite sure what it is that you do as a bad habit, then you may want to video yourself and watch it back later. I know it's terrible. We all hate the way that we look and sound on video, but it's a good way to identify when you're having any kind of issue. Remember the closed and the hidden gestures. Hidden are ones that the audience can't see. Closed gestures are ones that are going to close you off to the audience. And then I have parallel gestures in here as well. Text movement is the next section. Transitions, you want to make sure you're not just jumping from one thing to the other. If you said, when I was on vacation this summer, I went to Disney World. SeaWorld was really awesome and dolphins are great. Because you didn't quite get there. A transition sentence of, after we went to Disney World, we went to SeaWorld would be totally fine. So, we have this thing that I call the train of thought, and we kind of talked about that a little bit, and I'm going to draw a little one since y'all can't see the whole thing. I'm going to draw my little choo-choo train here. So, most people's trains of thought just kind of wander and go around, and for the most part, it's in a semi-linear thing. But whenever you have someone like me that's got ADD, your train of thought tends to go all over the place and go backwards and forwards and just upside down and on top of itself and everything like that. So none of us think in a linear manner. We do not go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No matter what it is you're thinking, we tend to go A, B, A and a half, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, J, G, H, I, J. We, kind of jump around because something will remind us of something else. Think about if you're watching YouTube videos, I call it riding the YouTube train, where you're watching a video and you look over and you go, ooh, recommended video. And then you watch that video and you look over and go, ooh, recommended video. And about 10 videos later, you realize you started by watching a tour of Disney World and you ended with a Discovery Channel documentary on giraffes. And you're just like, how did I get here? That's kind of what it's like to think about your train of thought. So, the audience isn't in your head. They cannot follow that like you can. You may be able to make those connections. I don't know if you've ever been talking to someone and you just say something out loud and they have no idea what you're talking about, but in your head, you were making all the connections, and then you're like, oh yeah, it was Keanu Reeves. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're like, oh yeah, 30 minutes ago we were talking about The Matrix, and then he was in another movie, and then, we couldn't remember his name. So there you go. And you may be like, oh yeah, bing, but they're not in there following that. So you have to help them. Think of it like an English paper, but it's more natural. You don't want it to be that stiff. Slow down and emphasize the ends of thoughts and paragraphs so that way people know where you're going next. If you use those transition words, however, next, after, whatever, it's going to help the audience know you're moving on. So, at the end of your first paragraph, you may finish it up, and that was the first place we went on vacation. The second place that we went, especially the little pause right there, helped to keep them apart. You don't want to say, that was the first place we went on vacation. The second place, they kind of run together. You can also do physical shifts. You can move during your speech, but you want to keep it simple. You don't want to go back and forth and back and forth. Posture is a good one. You got to be careful of slumping, especially if you're at the podium and you're leaned over, that kind of thing. We talked about our square stance, where you want to stand with your feet facing the front, kind of shoulder width apart, and then get comfortable and make sure your pants aren't falling down, and then do your speech in a comfortable way. Nonverbal signs, your nonverbal communication, you want to know how you are coming off to the audience. Are you friendly? Do you look angry? Are you nervous? That kind of thing. And you want to make sure that you are giving the audience a positive, open, inviting vibe. So it says avoid rocking, swaying, placing your hands behind your back, clasping them in front of you. Beware of nervous habits or natural defense mechanisms that may result in playing with your hair, shifting weight to one leg or the other, tapping your feet, pacing from side to side, and so forth. So those are the kinds of things that we do, especially now. messing with our IDs, or if we've got jewelry or earrings or something like that, identify those issues early on so that you have plenty of time to figure out what they are and you can fix them. If it's your hair is in your face and you keep pushing it back, put it up in a ponytail or pin it back or something so you're not having to mess with it all the time. If you don't enjoy yourself or look like you're enjoying yourself, the audience will get very bored. Remember, we don't like watching people that are uncomfortable. We talked about rocking and swaying. I always say that you are a ship on the ocean. If you are doing this back and forth, you're standing on a swaying ship, so stop rocking the boat. We talked about our natural balance, or we did it in chapter 1 where I say you shift because we don't put our weight all on one foot, or I'm sorry, we don't put our weight on both feet. We do put our weight all on one foot, and then that foot gets tired, so we shift to our other foot. But whenever you do it back and forth forever and ever, it gets very distracting. Remember, hands behind the back are hidden gestures. Hands in front are the blocking potty dance. Nervous habits. So you don't have any true homework, but this is your thinking homework. Go home tonight and video yourself doing something to identify what your nervous habits are. And then be careful of your standing posture in general. Again, no slumping over the podium. Stand up straight, but stay natural. You don't have to stand at attention. Some people want to do the whole hands behind the back thing. Just relax. Facial expression is next. Oh, you gotta match the body language. You have to. Otherwise, you're gonna look crazy. I think I mentioned this in the beginning again, but if you go, I had such a great time. It was wonderful. That's very scary. I'm gonna be a little bit afraid. Or if you go, I had a great time, or I had the best time of my life, or I had the best time of my life. It's very creepy. So all your body, your face, everything should match. If you're talking about how great a time you had, you should say, I had a great time. It was the best time I'd ever had. Because now my face, my voice, my body, everything is matching that same dynamic. Enjoy yourself and have a passion for it. If you don't care, the audience won't care. Look in the mirror and see what your emotion faces are. Some people don't have a lot of emotion in their face in general, so you kind of have to either fake it and make sure you know what kind of faces to make while you're talking, or make up with that in your voice, but use your face to be expressive. Just because you don't go, I'm so excited, doesn't mean you can't go, I was really excited to go. It can be the same energy without you having to be crazy. It's more important now, especially that we have the face shields, because it's going to cast that glare on your face, so you really want to make sure the audience can see you. And then your eyes are important too, because you can smile without your eyes, and you can tell it's fake. But if you smile with your whole face, smile with your eyes, people will know that you genuinely want to be there. Ending. So you got to hold the last moment of your speech for just a second, because if you try to go, and that was the best vacation I ever had, thank you. You're going to lose people. They're going to be stunned because that was so quick and they don't really know what just happened. You ended and you walked away and they don't even remember what you said. So, 2 seconds. I call it letting it land. So if you imagine, and I really hope you all can see this on here, maybe you can zoom in. Imagine that you have a person, let's see where I'm at. I'm trying to draw big. You have a person here, and you have a person over here. And imagine what you say is a little paper plane that the other person has to catch. If you just throw it super fast, that person's not going to be able to catch it. And if you throw it towards the ground or throw it too far up high, the person's not going to be able to catch it. So you have to throw it the right way, in the right direction, at that person, at the right speed. And then you have to allow it to land. You have to let the person catch it. And that's what happens even with sound. When you throw sound at a person, we perceive it to be instantaneous for the most part, but it is not. There is a slight delay, and if we make ourselves throw the sound out there and then leave really fast, the audience isn't going to have a chance to like digest that information. Our thought process is slower since we're not in your head. We talked about that. And your audience is trying to keep up with your entire speech anyway that they're not familiar with. So we talked about how speaking is a lot faster than reading. Reading, you can go back and read it over and over again. When someone is speaking to you, you may not hear that thing again, so you have to sort of understand a little faster, but we still can't quite get there as fast as speech is. So make your ending poignant. Your ending needs to have a nice moment. And that was all about the best vacation I ever had. Thank you. Wait. It gives the audience just a second to settle. You say the words, thank you, so that everyone knows you're done. Because sometimes you may pause in your speech and you don't want someone to start clapping when you're not done. So the two little words, thank you, let the audience know you're finished. It's also a good verbal cue for me because sometimes I'm writing and I don't know that you're done. I have looked up before and the person is gone from the podium and I was like, what is happening? So I want to hear thank you so that I can look up at you and say great job and stop your time. Those two words are very important. It's also an audience's last impression of you. So they get their first impression, they get their last impression. It's like a nice impression sandwich. The next part in here are about some modes of delivery. So a mode is a form or a variety of form or variety of function. So there are a couple different types of speeches in this area. First one's impromptu. That's what your final is going to be, little to no preparation. It's not recommended for an actual speech because you're not prepared. It's something that people need to do in the field for news and things like that, but for the purposes of this, you only have to do it for your final. Useful for like a question and answer sort of thing as well. Manuscript is read verbatim from a piece of paper. You don't have to rely on your memory. Now what we're going to do, you don't need to read off your paper. It's very important that you use note cards only and you use an outline so that way you can connect with the audience most of the time. If I see this, you will get 0 points for your eye contact, and that's already a 90, not even talking about anything else that you do. You must look up. It's better to focus on your oral performance, but most students just end up reading it. If you try to do manuscripts, so don't do that. You're going to fall into your reading voice again. Extemporaneous is the most common. Its definition is delivered without notes or written text, but in practice, you have some notes, some outlines, things like that. We're kind of doing a mixture of manuscript and extemporaneous. You will write an entire speech. You will have a whole speech like this written out. That is kind of your backup information. If I have the entire chapter at my disposal, but I am working off of an outline, that is helpful. I can use this to remember where to go, but in case I forget something and I need to fill in some holes, I've read this chapter in its entirety and I can pull information from there. I would much rather you have too much information than not enough information, because if you have too much, then you always have extra to pull from in case you just forget a big chunk or something like that. So you want to have the entire thing for reference. You want to have your outline to help you remember what it is. Many speakers will use note cards in this case. That's what we are going to do. But extemporaneous can cause weakness in your grammar choices and disfluency because it is not super prepared. However, that's kind of what I want for us, because I want you to learn to speak in this manner. Having human emotion, even if you're saying is not bad. I would rather you seem more personable than perfect. And then the strength, though, is that it allows for in-the-moment adjustment. So you're not like completely glued to the paper if someone, which we're not going to do questions in the middle of our speeches, but if you were doing like a press conference and someone had a question, then you would stop, answer that question, and be able to continue what it is you're talking about. The last one is memorizing. It's rarely used, but it is useful because there's things like competitions where you have to memorize things. Excuse me. And for this class, memorization is not good, but partial memorization is decent. you want to have a good idea of what it is that you're saying. You want to remember what that paragraph looks like. You want to know what that paragraph said. You don't necessarily want to read it word for word, because then you can fall into that monotonous thing. Memorized is good for like whenever we do acting. You got to have a monologue that's memorized because you're acting it. So I would recommend not doing that, but knowing it, being comfortable. Let's see. He's got a lot of tips for memorization. One of them is standing up while you memorize, speaking things out loud. So this is good for practicing as well. Visualize the placement of words on the page. That's always good, where you can be like, okay, that was on the bottom left-hand corner. Highlighting, compounding sentences, meaning you try the first sentence first by itself, then you try the first and second sentence, then you try the first, second, and third sentence, and so on and so forth. After that, compound paragraphs. Tape yourself, play it back, have someone prompt you as you practice, and start early. He also has this little last resort thing over here. It's kind of overkill, but it's something that could help you. You read your speech word for word into a recording device. Then rewind the recording, and number 3, listen to the speech, look at the speech, say the speech all at the same time, because then you're using all of your skills all at once, your oral, and visuals all at the same time. When he talks about evaluating your speech, it's really you. You are the best judge of your effectiveness because you know what you're capable of. I may not yet. By the end of the year, I'll probably know what you're capable of, but you're the one that knows what it is you can do. So if you know you didn't do your best, then that's on you. If you know you did your best and it still wasn't super great, then come talk to me. We'll figure it out. We're going to work on certain things that you need to work on, but it's really up to you. Unfortunately, I'm the one that's giving you a grade, but you'll know how you did. And then check on these food for thought questions. You can use these if you're stuck to ask yourself, if you're going in the right direction. Ask yourself if your speech is clear to someone who doesn't know the material. You may want to do it for someone that's never heard it before, or someone that maybe doesn't know the stories you're about to tell. And then ask your parents or your friends to read it or listen to you practice, because other people are a good sense of if it makes any sense. It may make sense to you because you were there and you have the context, but if it doesn't make sense to someone else, then you need to reevaluate. And at the end of chapter 8 here, I've got 4 funny videos for you to watch. They're just kind of about different things. Channel 11 News kind of shows a pause at the end of the sentence, at the end of your speech. Dwight's speech is what not to do. Jim tricks him into banging on the podium and using dictatorial practices in his speech. Michael's business school lesson is just an example of a terrible preparation. And then our prices have never been lower is just kind of respecting the other person. If you're on the phone or something like that, that one's generally just really funny, and it shows how not to act. It'll show you how you can seem if you're not not being personable. So that's all I have. Make sure you do your homework. Your homework will be due Thursday by midnight. That would be the 27th, I think, if I'm looking at my calendar correctly. Again, please email me if you have any questions. Hopefully you'll have your chapter 1 and 2 questions turned in by tomorrow, which is Tuesday. Today's Monday when I'm filming this, the 24th. So chapter 1 and 2 questions due tomorrow on Tuesday, and then chapter 8 lesson would be technically on Tuesday. Then chapter 8 questions due Thursday, and then Thursday you'll also have another assignment, which is the inference assignment. And then you shouldn't have any homework after that as well. So don't forget to look in the video, look in the mirror, whatever, figure out what your quirks are that you may need to fix, and then do those questions. Thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon and a good weekend, and stay safe.